The switch over to Warner took a lot of people by surprise. Did everybody in the band agree on it immediately, or was there quite...
Well, no, there's a lot of thought went into it.
Essentially, we had every record company in the world come to us with the exception of one. I can't remember who that was, but sorry. We had a choice between any record company that we wanted, and we went with the one that seemed to us to have the most integrity and to be the best for the band. Warner's offered us two things we didn't have before. One of them being the reason we're here now, which is better distribution.
And Buzz Buddy.
Right.
It's tradition.
Great T-shirts. The other being that we have complete artistic control over everything, the contract.
That's 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
We just handed the record, they said.
Is that right?
That's it.
But did they kind of offer sort of like suggestions, like
They have it, yeah.
very, very gingerly?
There are understood ways to succeed in the music industry, and some of them we agree with, and some of them we don't, and the ones we don't agree with, we don't do. So.
前々からその、メジャーの会社と契約したいっていうのは思ってたんです。
Had you thought even from the very beginning that you would eventually be signed with a major label, or?
こういう一派もまた一つのムーブメントになってると、まあ評論家的には思うわけで、例えばその
Had you thought even from the very beginning that you would eventually be signed with a major label, or that was not even?
From the beginning of our career, we never even knew that we were going to do this. We never had any idea that it would get as big as it did. Having not planned it, 10 seconds on clearly, this far along, there are things you have to think about. The fact that our schedule has been booked until February of 89 records. We know what we're doing for the next 9 months of our lives, but outside of that, we had no intention. We had no intention of ever even recording an album, much less touring the world. I think that attitude of just kind of doing it because we wanted to kind of gives us a big leap in a lot of people who go into it from reasons outside of it.
でと思った通りこうプラン立てずにやっていく上で、IRS でやってる間になんかこう、やりづらい部分とかその制約みたいなのを感じたことはあります。
Aside from the distributional limitations of IRS, were there any shortcomings in being part of that organization?
Not really. Not that we feel like we can really talk about it, I guess.
No.
That would be like breaking up with someone and writing a book about how many times they fall at night or whatever. You just don't. There are things that you don't really talk about. Just kind of courtesy.
Yeah, right.
For what they are, which is a small independent, a small major label or a very large independent. They served us very well. And anything else, if we had gone with a major label in the beginning, we would have been swallowed, and we would have never gotten along to the point that we are now in terms of the amount of people that we reach. So IRS was perfect for us.
What do you mean by swallowed?
A lot of major labels tend to take on a lot of small bands, and they're not really putting a big push behind them. And IRS had people that really believed in us and felt like, although they didn't understand us all the time, they were able to listen to the records and tell them there's something going on there that's good. And so they followed us and they kept up with us and they supported us.
単にそのスタート時点として、インディーレベルからやるのがやりやすかったっていう以外に、その何かIRS とこうにやる意味をね見出してたの。なんか新しい動きをアメリカで作ろうみたいなそういうわかります？そういう意味合いもはなかった。
I suppose that the IRS being a smaller organization made it easier for you guys. You said there was no risk of being swallowed up. But at the same time, since IRS was kind of a new label, I suppose that there was also sort of the intention of being part of something new, starting a new type of sound.
Or movement.
Well, at the time, when we signed with them, well, they always had a pretty cool roster, but when we signed, when we were contemplating signing with them, they were really cool. I mean, we had like the Buzzcocks and the Cramps and stuff, bands Blue Light, and just kind of that idea that, you know, you can kind of make cool records on a shoestring budget. And, you know, that doesn't require big bands and all this bullshit, really, that we didn't want to do. So.
In that sense, it was something new.
I think the movement, I feel like the movement was probably outside of the label, though. I mean, clearly what we were doing was outside of the label. I think that they had a lot of great bands, but never really, I mean, it was kind of after the fact, you know, by the time we got signed, it was 82, and most of the excitement that could really be considered a movement had already passed, I would say.
You think so?
Yeah, also that's a great shirt. That's a good shirt.
What's the movement you refer to there? You said the movement was over by...
Well, it's punk, you know, I mean, the excitement of that had kind of already gone a little corporate at that point, and I think that whatever movement we spearheaded, supposedly, which of course we didn't, or whatever movement we were kind of caught up in, which we were the second or third wave after that initial 75, 76, 77 excitement. You know, it was something that was much more autonomous than the record label that we signed. They were just, you know, the best ones at that point.
わかりました。じゃあ作品の話に移りたいんですが、ニューアルバムは今までみたいなそのすごく険悪なムードというか怒りみたいなものが幾分すらいですごく、ほのぼのした気分に僕はなったんですけども、なんかそのソングライティングの時点でそういう気持ち的な変化はありました。
The latest album, Green, seems like it doesn't have any of the anger, maybe negative feelings that were expressed earlier. It seems like it's more relaxed, more wholesome, more mellow.
Wholesome, mellow, strong words.
What happened at the songwriting stage? Is the question.
What happened to?
Why did it go in that direction? First of all, is that a correct assumption?
Sounds like the ice cream unit.
We should close the door for your tape recorder.
The 5 o'clock chime.
Yeah. Is that it? Yeah. 5 o'clock. So it's nice to know when 5 o'clock rolls around.
Do you mind if I smoke? Is it okay?
Yeah,
Is it okay if I smoke? With Green, we wanted to make a record that was very uplifting, very good, and that was,
I guess that is a correct assumption of what's saying.
it is. Yeah, I think mellow is kind of an awful word, but I wanted to make a record. We wanted to make a record that was very uplifting, and so a lot of the vitriol or the fire, the anger that's expressed on some of the earlier stuff. I just didn't feel like it was really the time for it. I feel like right now it's time for me to be lifted above all that, above the other things. And it's a very internal record as well. It feels like the first person singing, third person plural, and it's a record of liberation and revolution, but it's not a revolution of the people. It's more of an internal, more of an individual landscape that we're doing.
なんていうのかな、まあ、ほのぼのしたっていう表現を、まあ、メロっていうふうに訳したら、まあ、その言葉に対して反発があったんだけども、それよりは、精神を高揚させるっていうのそのような作品は作りたかったと。でなおかつ、まあ、より内省的な、テーマを取り上げようということで、まあそれに加えて、まあこう革命的で人間がこう精神的に解放されるような、そういったテーマ。
なるほどね。そんなソングライティング曲を書いてるときに、例えばこれを聞いたら人はこうハッピーになるだろうとか高揚するだろうとか、そういうことを考えてるっていうのは僕すごく驚いたんですが、REM のメンバーが今までもそうだったんですよ。
までって。
だから今回からそういうなんか聞き手のことを割と考えたり、そういう客観的に割とするようになったの。
You said you made the record with the intention of being uplifting. That surprised him. He never thought of you guys as being the type of musicians who write songs with the listener in mind. It seems like you just write them for yourselves. But you had the actual intention of it.
Yeah, I mean, that uplifting might be something that I felt like I needed myself. As a reaction to document, which I don't think Green is, but if you wanted to compare the two, it would be very clearly a bright and dark. You know, I think so. But, you know, document is the entire album is about fire, and it's very cynical and very spinny. And very vitriolic. And Green is kind of the other way around, although a number of the songs are very sad, or on the surface are very sad. There's a hope there. There's always been hope in the music, but I really wanted to make it much more evident here with You Are the Everything Stand, pop song, which has a touch of cynicism, but it's kind of it's a kind of a universal thing. It's like a big joke that everyone's in on, rather than a personal joke that some people get and some people don't get. Yada yada.
You said I wanted to make it that way, meaning that.
Well, it was we. I mean, but in writing the words, which people look to, you know, I think that we always write for ourselves, but you know, clearly there's an audience there, and they're going to be listening and interpreting and pulling a lot of things out of the songs, and so it's very important that we can have it together and know what it is that we want to present to us.
Get Up っていう曲と最後のタイトルのない曲があるんですが、今まで割と一方的にその自分たちのステートメントなり詩とか歌をこうバーンとこう放り出してきただけという割と印象があるんですけど、この2曲を聴くとすごくその聞き手のことを思いやってというか、聞き手に対してコミュニケートしたいっていう部分がすごく素直に出てると思うんですけど、どうでしょう。
On the songs, the untitled track, and I believe the other one seems Get Up. Yeah. You seem to be directly trying to approach the listener, as opposed to just kind of freely, you know, throwing out your ideas. You seem to be actually going directly for the listener. Is that an accurate assumption?
Bill's jet lagged.
No, it's just that I mean, you can answer that a lot better than I can. And I am jet lagged.
I would say yes, but again, the listener, you know, in those terms, is an extension of myself. Get Up in particular takes this kind of Jekyll and Hyde thing where there's always this circuitous kind of writing where I'm saying one thing and then I'm playing devil's advocate and saying the exact opposite and polarizing in order to achieve a more whole understanding of whatever it is that I'm dealing with. And in that song I sing, dreams, they complement my life, and Bill backs me up with dreams, they complicate my life. And there's this whole thing going on there. The untitled track maybe doesn't share that, but it is a voice going out to the people who are listening to it, and it's a very clearly stated idea or message.
Is that different from before?
No, it might be with the untitled track and with a number of other songs on Green. I was trying to simplify. Get Up and Stand and pop songs are so simple that they're moronic almost. But within that, you know, there's a great deal of irony, and that irony is not lost on us, and I hope not on the audience. But they're very clear and very simple writing, and hopefully that's translatable and transferable to the people who listen to it.
曲の中でね、こう自分がこうさまざまなことを言おうとしてるんだけど、結構意識的にね、こう矛盾してることをこう表現するわけで、その辺のことが伝わってるかどうかわからないけど、まあその辺のこう皮肉っぽいところがあるけど、
それゲラップの方ですね。反対同士の方
いや、あれ両方じゃないのかな。
あれはじゃあ直接的になんかそのアルバムの、なんていうかなの要するに挨拶的なね、か聞き手に直接そのマイケル・スタイプの本音としてなんか思わず言ってしまったみたいなそういう歌じゃないんです。
両方？
いや最後のラスト曲、本当にファンへのメッセージっていう形で最後にこう、そういう言葉を正直に、入れたっていうそういう曲かなと思います。僕はあなたのために歌を書いてるんだよっていう、そういうなんか
What he got from Untitled was this idea that you were speaking directly to the listeners, like saying, almost saying that, you know, I'm writing this message for you. Is that different from what you've done before, from any other approaches you've taken?
Well, again, a lot of the songs on Green use I or you as the subject, yeah, whatever you would say. But using the first person singular, you take a chance that people are going to mistake me, Michael Stipe, as that voice, and it's not always the case. For the Untitled track especially, it's much more of a universal thing. I think that song is pretty much for anyone who's ever. It's almost a prayer, and within that prayer, it's for anyone who's ever loved anyone else and is separated from them for any amount of time. So, it's a prayer. I mean, and it's not mine. It's much more universal, much bigger.
まあ一応解説してくれてんだけど、なんかそういうことなくちょっとズレがあるように思うけど、つまり彼がこうその曲にね限らないで他の曲をもうやはり同じようなアプローチを使ってると思うけどね。ただしその曲に関して言えば、まあ今までとの違いっていうのは。よくわかんないね結局は話が難しすぎるよ。
日本での受け取られ方なんですけども、REM っていうとすごくハードなロックンロールとかもあるのにもかかわらずね、そういうロックサウンドとしてなんかこう肉体的に楽しむっていう人はすごく少なくて、いわゆる辞書片手にヘッドホン、して辞書片手に一生懸命詩を調べてで聞き終わったらすっかりなんかシニカルな人間になってるみたいなそういうイメージで受け取られてるんですけど、これはそれに対してはどう思いますか？アメリカでもそうですか
？In Japan, it seems the average REM listener is not exactly taking the music at face value. Like not listening to it as just kind of straight rock and roll or whatever. Not listening to it as they would a Bon Jovi that. But instead of the type of person who puts on headphones and concentrates on it, gets out the dictionary, look up the words, see what it means, and once he or she is finished listening to the record, thinks that they become more philosophical or more cynical or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Or altered in some way.
Right. We are a psychedelic drug.
They're mind expanding.
Opiate of the masses.
So, how do you define that situation? Is it the same in the States?
Very much.
Yeah.
Although reward.
The reward.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's great when something. It's also really great when something like Stand can become a single, and the housewives are listening to it. The regular rock bands are listening to it. Something that a lot of people are listening to, kind of hopefully raises the collective unconscious a little bit, whether they're aware of it or not. They're listening to something that's probably got a little more content than Bon Jovi, and that's very pretentious of me to say, but I kind of believe it. I guess I have to.
What do you mean by substance?
There's more there. I mean, it's not a lot of music, and you could say that. Although I'm not a big Bon Jovi fan, I can't say I've ever been listening to one of their records. I think that a lot of music that's mass marketed, that's produced to make money, that is a product before it's anything else. It tends to come across like a lot of things that we face in the 20th century, which is it's kind of a given that it's handed to you complete, and you're to accept it at face value, and there's no thought process that needs to go into it, very much like television. films, most videos, even literature these days. Is what I really think about. You just kind of accept it and ingest it. And I think that, if anything, there's an atavism that REM has that is hoping to circumvent that movement and jump back to a time when you accept something and you recognize that you have to put part of yourself into it to understand it. And it's not as easy as just taking it in and moving on. Hopefully it would be more than a film that you would go and see and say, well, that was great, and then go on to the next day.
Stop, you pause to think about it.
You pause to think, I mean, it's also, it can be wallpaper, but there's more to it than that. If you don't want it to be wallpaper, if you want to think about it, there's stuff there, the substance.
いや、中身のあるものを作ってる、まあ一応自負してるんだけどね、例えばボンジョビなんかと比べれば
じゃあそういう受け取られ方してることに対して別に不満はないみたいな。
不満っていうよりはそれは一種の誇りさえ感じてる。
本当に、
それだけ深くね、こう聞き手が考えている。
なるほどね。
証拠だと思う。
ザワンアイラブっていうシングルがすごくヒットしたんですけど、あれに関してはむしろ例えば単なるラブソングである。普通要するにさっき言ったみたいに単純にね、ポップソングとしてなんかヒットしちゃったみたいな面は感じませんか
？The one I love went over pretty well in the charts. I guess a lot of people just took it to be like a regular love song without really recognizing it. Yeah, I'm gonna try to hear it. Exactly.
It's a very, very brutal song.
There was that sort of reaction to it.
It's unfortunate that the first song of ours to really make it into that was that. I mean, we had questions about recording it, but in an effort not to censor ourselves ever. I mean, clearly there are things we just don't write pop songs about because they're stupid, or they're too complex to simplify into a 3-minute pop song. But it's unfortunate that was the first song that a lot of people on a mass level heard from us. But I think overall, yeah, it's a brutal song. Pretty real.
もう何だった？
いや、要するに俺が聞いたのは、これからメジャーからデビューしてね、どんどん例えば、ファン層なり客が増えると、今までみたいな良質なファンだけじゃなくなるんですよね。その辺に対する心配なりなんなりってない。誤解する人もいると思う。
Now that you do reach a wider audience, do you worry about a lot of bozos buying your record?
Worry about what?
A lot of bozos buying your record, not really pausing to think about it, just kind of not getting from it what you guys are trying to put into it.
Well, get more five next one.
It's kind of the idea that in terms of lifting and that's not like my goal in life to lift the unconscious, the mass unconsciousness or mass consciousness, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to be melophonistic or not. But I just think that there's more there, and whether they get it or not, they're ingesting it. It might go straight to the reptile brain and sit there until they die, but it's there. You can call it what you want. I think that well, the very much primitive part of your brain that doesn't have to deal with input necessarily, but works more on the machine.
I think what the gist of the question is, though, would that ever be like a possible source of dissatisfaction?
The bozos are buying a record?
Well, also kind of like whenever you play like a large venue, like most of the people there, you're just not getting through them. It's just like, no matter what you do, it seems like it
can be frustrating, yeah.
They're clapping at the wrong parts, they're laughing at the wrong thing.
They yell out at the
wrong parts.
Yeah, it can be very frustrating, but I think that's something that's a given. I mean, you're going to find bozos wherever you go, and and frat boys are going to be around for the rest of my life. You know?
And it's either that or stop reaching one out of four that do get it.
Mhm.
Just stop making records. You don't have to do that.
An example, I mean, a good example of that reaching out and it possibly doing something is might be that the band was very involved in the presidential election, and we were pro-Dukakis, all of us, and went around to all of the fraternity and sorority houses in our town, which you know, in America are very conservative and tend towards Republican ideals, and et cetera. I don't have to explain that, but I will. And left, you know, things stating that we were pro-Dukakis and to please get out and vote, et cetera. I got a letter back from one of the sororities, and I thought, well, this is the least I can do, although it's probably in vain, but I'm going to do it anyway because, you know, I'll if nothing else, I'll feel better for having done it. And we did it, and got a letter back from one of the sorority houses saying, you know, thanks so much for leaving this, you know, one out of maybe 20 that we sent out while we took them around. Thanks for sending this. We're completely behind the caucus. And we realize what a kind of, you know, how strange it must have been for you to come to our house and leave this, but we support, you're supporting the caucus and resembles. It was a Jewish sorority, by the way. I think the caucus's take on Jews is a little more widespread than Mr. Bush's. Anyway, it does get through, and it does affect people, and it does do something. On the same, you know, on the same thing. I mean, along the same lines, we have to pretty much clarify for ourselves, you know, in terms of importance in the world, that being in a pop band is not, you know, it's pretty low on the ladder of important things, but it's what we've chosen to do with our life and with our time right now, and so whether everyone else takes it very seriously, we do. You know, it's our job. The same way interpreting, writing, or whatever you do is.
Well, I mean, isn't it obvious that people consider it important? I mean, they seem to consider it important than most other things.
Right, but I mean, I think sometimes in talking and trying to explain that it comes off as much more, you know, that I'm taking it as much more than it is.
Yeah.
And I guess I have to, again, polarize and say, well, it's not. It is something, but, you know, I mean, ideas or songs that we write are not affecting billions and billions of people, you know, cutting the taxes or Social Security or whatever. So, you know, we're not world leaders, but.
Well, in a way you are. I mean, you're what they call opinion leaders.
You know, I guess they're
Well, what you say is published. You know, when you go out and do things, people write about it, right?
right, but, you know, they write about.
You start wearing a glove on one hand.
I know.
Glove on one hand.
Yeah, but, you know, people write about Pia Zadora too, and people write about, you know, Barbara Bush, and that's pretty unimportant in all these times. It's taken too much more than it is.
じゃあ、そうですね。
最後の質問なんですが、
Let's go. Time for one more.
すごく、変わった性格でね、変人としてマスコミに割と恐れられてた人で、本人もインタビューはもう一切しないとかそういうことを言ってたりして、これからまあ一応ワーナーから出たらいろんな取材のあれとか多くなると思うんですけど、その辺自分の性格なりそういう対外的な態度を直していかなくちゃとか直そうとか思ってます。
He'd always heard about you guys as like being sort of the band of eccentrics, the band that doesn't really cooperate with the press, the band that kind of does things its own way. But now that you signed with a major label and you're kind of in the big leagues now, in the big leagues, you're going to have to play by their rules. Is that not the case?
It's not the case.
No, we've always been pretty cooperative.
It's just that we weren't, you know, before we went cover material, and now I guess we are. Maybe not with rock and roll. Although who knows? Yes, but again, big throw. You know, again, we're going to do things our way, and we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face. We never have, but we're not going to do anything like that.
Well, I mean, actually,
we can be very ugly that way, but I think we've always been accommodating. I don't think we're terribly eccentric.
Well, of course, that's obviously what an eccentric's going to say. When I interviewed you 4 years, actually, Rocky and I interviewed you 4 years ago. It was a different guy, but I was interpreting, and you were quite a bit more reticent back then. Seems like now you're a lot more comfortable being interviewed. It may have just been a bad day, but
Probably a bad day and probably a lot of experience behind us. And
Mhm.
4 years is a long time.
that's right.
You probably interpreted it a lot better now than you were then.
Thank you.
I thought I recognized you, but I didn't know. I thought you...
That was back at that the tour of the campuses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which I think it would, go from 2,200 people this time, but...
Times change. Well, anyway, I guess we got to get some clothes there. Yeah.
Great.
All right, John. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I guess we'll
Sorry,
get...
I'm out of it. I'm just like,
Don't worry.
really.
Big jet lag. Can you hand me that noxious green liquid behind you? Yeah.
It's like an avocado shake.
It's melted.